Hi there, welcome to another episode of the Transfer Talk podcast. It is me once again, Dharmesh Sheth, in the hot seat. I've lost track where Pete Graves is, whether he's sunning it in Florida or maybe he is so sad about Newcastle United's summer transfer window. I think it is the latter. Joining me, Sam Tighe, once again from ESPN, and Dan Kilpatrick, news editor of The Athletic, and making a debut on the Transfer Talk podcast. Not Dan yourself, but shorts. We've not seen this one before.
Yes, I wasn't aware that shorts were frowned upon on the Transfer Talk podcast.
Not at all.
So
not
advance
frowned.
apologies.
No,
Frowned, welcomed.
Yes,
Okay.
I welcome them. And Sam, I heard that you actually arrived in shorts and changed into these jeans.
I did.
Maybe should have stuck with the shorts.
Well, honestly, first of all, no thanks. But I would love to match the energy. So yeah, maybe I should have run back out once I'd seen Dan and changed back into shorts. Producer John would have been fuming though.
Oh, Producer John. Yes, the less said about Producer John, the better. Right, let's begin with the biggest story of the past week. Once again, involves Newcastle United and, of course, Eddie Howe, the head coach, walking away from the club on Thursday morning after 5 years. He'd spoken the night before about the future of his captain, his talisman, the midfielder, Bruno Guimaraes, saying he couldn't control the forces at play. That was in regards to Bruno Guimaraes leaving the club. Sam, just generally on Eddie Howe, we look at the last two summer transfer windows, including this one and last summer. Mm-hmm. They've taken their toll, haven't they?
Big time, yeah, absolutely. He's lost in the last, let's say, 2 years. So let's go back to Elliot Anderson the year before, but then obviously last summer with Isak, and then this time around with Gordon, with Tonali, and presumably with Bruno Guimaraes to come as well. 5 players that are so good. And it must hurt so much for a manager to lose those players and either not replace them or replace them in less than ideal circumstances, because last summer was a complete nightmare. They missed out on a bunch of striker targets and ended up with Voltemade, who's a funky tactical fit, I'd say, for Eddie Howe, and they massively overpaid for Yoane Wissa, considering his age and his profile. So that was a disaster. And, you know, you get into this summer and you're hoping it goes better. You get gazumped for Victor Munoz to Liverpool. You get gazumped for Yohan Manzambi to Aston Villa. And then the Bruno stuff keeps coming up. And at a certain point, Eddie Howe, I think, is within his rights to go, can I do this again? Because he'd already taken Newcastle from the genuine depths of the Premier League, a relegation scrap, and moved them all the way up into the top 4 twice and won a trophy. You lose those 5 players over the course of 2 years. You don't effectively replace them. You keep getting beaten to these signatures by other clubs. Look at this Newcastle squad now. Look at the way it's shaped up. Look at the recruitment they've done this summer in terms of the age of the players that they're buying, the experience levels. This is another 3-year rebuild, isn't it? Like, can we look at this in any other way? That if Eddie Howe was to continue with this job from this point, he would need 3 more years to get back up to the top of the mountain. So can he bring himself to do that would be the question. Like, if I was Eddie Howe there, I'd be like, have I got it in me? 3 more years to do the same thing again? And at a certain point, yeah, if your gut is telling you no, then you have to walk away.
Dan, Sam says 3-year rebuild. They brought in Matthias Geisler from Al Ahly. What kind of club is he joining? Is he joining the club that Sam's just described there?
Yeah, I think he is. Let's not forget as well that even before this summer started, Newcastle were kind of on a downward trajectory. They were almost in free fall toward the back end of last season. I think from January 9th, they won 5 league games, and that's more or less the whole second half of last season. There was a point with about 4 or 5 games to go where I thought they could actually get dragged into a relegation battle, and that was before they sold Gordon, Tonali, and potentially Guimaraes. So they were already struggling. They've sold, or they're likely to sell, their 3 best players, having sold some very good players last summer, notably Isak as well. And they've got a very young and inexperienced squad, and now they've got a manager who is very highly rated but completely untested at this level of European football, and obviously in the Premier League.
So, at the highest level, full stop, really, you have to say.
Yeah. So it's a big job. And we've heard good things about Geisler, particularly his philosophy and his kind of style of play. But I think he's got to be a firefighter. You know, that's the job he's coming into. So he's joining a club in a really, really difficult position. And it's kind of remarkable to think, I remember being at the very first game of the kind of Saudi regime. They played Spurs at St James's Park. I think it was Steve Bruce's last game, actually. And, there's very much a feeling of, anything is possible now. And I think the fans then thought, well, we're going to be buying players from Liverpool, Tottenham and Arsenal, not the other way around, not losing our best players to them. And it felt like a new era of opportunity. And that is kind of, I think now we can safely say that is turning sour at a pretty rapid rate.
Dan, you say firefighting. I don't want to say the R word, but I will. Relegation.
Yeah.
Surely not.
Well,
surely they're not going to be fighting next season.
I can tell you in our news meetings at the Athletic, that has come up, the R word. People are talking about Newcastle and relegation. I don't think, even as it stands, even if they lose Guimaraes, they've got one of the 3 worst squads in the Premier League. But as I think the last few years with United and obviously Tottenham and you can include West Ham as well, teams with decent squads, big clubs being dragged into a relegation battle, I just don't think you can rule it out. There are a few injuries away, and let's not forget that some of the players they've still got on their books, some of their better players like Lewis Hall, are injury prone. I think they're a few injuries away from being bang in trouble next year.
Still too much for me, I'd say. It's still too much. But I have to accept that, Dan, you're talking about Newcastle's form from January the 9th, was it? Five wins, basically.
Yes.
Almost all of this time, Bruno Guimaraes was injured. And it was always the case that, without him, they were never able to win a game properly, that the statistics started to rear its head. And he's probably going to go. So they've got quite a job to replace these players. But Gisela is very interesting because he's extremely highly rated. And when you talk to people in football circles, like almost honestly, like the reputation this guy has within the game is remarkable. Like the impact that he has left on people in the sport when they've come across him seems incredible for a guy who was only managed so far in Austria and Saudi Arabia. So it's an amazing litmus test of his reputation and his standing. I'm very interested to see what happens. I mean, I'm not ruling anything out here. They could be terrible. They could be amazing. I really am not sure what to expect. But relegation is, to me, that is not fair to put Newcastle in that bracket right now. And assisting that, I would say, I think it's a good year to be weak, because the promoted 3, I presume, are going to be quite poor. And there's a couple of other clubs like sort of floating towards the bottom of the table there that I think are in for a tough ride. Like, not to single one out, but like Fulham, for example. Like, Fulham fans have been worried for the last 2 months that this is the year that they're going to go down because they've lost a load of players and not necessarily replaced them with quality, not even got good transfer fees for most of them. So it might be a year in which you can be quite weak and get away with it. Whereas last year, obviously, that clearly was not the case.
Okay, let's talk Bruno Guimaraes then, because if he was to go, you could argue Newcastle United will be weaker than they are now. You just mentioned their results from the back end of last season when he wasn't around. Arsenal have made their move finally, formally, to Newcastle United. Predictably, Newcastle United have rejected that opening offer. There is an inevitability that it is going to happen, though, isn't it?
Does feel like it, for sure. I was thinking about this, actually, and the parallels for the Bruno Guimaraes to Arsenal situation with Jack Grealish to Man City are really, really strong here, because you just talked about how Bruno is the captain, but he's more than that. He's the emotional connection for the fans. He's the best player. He's their favourite player. He's their guy, as Jack Grealish was for Aston Villa, of course. And in this situation, the certain club does not want to sell. They do not want to sell their best player, their golden boy, but the player's will is fairly well established. The big club is circling. The money's going to come in. It just feels like it's going to happen. And even to the point where, did you see on Monday, there was a big discussion on social media about whether or not Bruno Guimaraes had turned up for pre-season training, like his return from his break, with lots of people arguing and tracking flights and all sorts of stuff, until eventually Bruno Guimaraes himself posted a picture of him at La Manga in Newcastle's pre-season setup on Instagram and kind of put the rumours to bed. But even that level of like, will he, won't he turn up for pre-season sort of thing, that was very Grealish to City in 2021 as well. Based on history, this only ends one way, I'm afraid, Newcastle fans, and it is a hammer blow. It is absolutely gutting, but I would be stunned if Bruno Guimaraes doesn't join Arsenal in the next few weeks.
Bruno Guimaraes is one. Dan, you mentioned Lewis Hall as another player that could potentially go. Is he someone that Newcastle United can realistically keep hold of?
Yeah, I think so. I think they can keep Hall. I think if they, as I said in the last answer, if they don't keep him, I think they're bang in trouble. If they can't keep selling players, experienced senior international players, and replacing them with young, unproven players. So I think the Guimaraes situation feels a little bit different in that I feel like Newcastle probably think they are powerless to keep him, given the money on offer and given that he said, as widely reported, that he wants to join Arsenal. I don't believe Lewis Hall is angling for a move in quite the same way.
Manchester United are very, very interested in him. But if, and it's a big if, Newcastle United ended up doing business on Lewis Hall, what kind of figure are we talking about here?
Well, he'll have the English premium and the Premier League premium. He's a very good left back. He's a bit injury prone, but I think you've got to be looking at upwards of £50 million, right?
Way higher, I think. Way higher. It's just because look at the market and the way it's been set. I just think it will probably be 70 plus if for Newcastle to sell. I don't know if he's injury prone or if he was just simply overplayed because they had no other options. I don't know what the answer is there. Obviously, he always felt like he was carrying a niggle for like 3 months during the first half of last season. But was it just a case of he had to play, he had to keep going, he had to keep playing? And if he joined a squad that had more options, would that clear itself up? I'd be interested to see that. But yeah, Lewis Hall, I mean, is not 50 million. 50 million would be a bargain for him at this point, I think, with all the things you said and with the market set the way it is.
Right. Another incoming at Newcastle, Sam, is the goalkeeper Lukas Hornacek, signed in a deal worth £25.7 million. He's been brought in as the number one. Does this signing represent an upgrade for Newcastle United?
So they signed Ewan Zhaoen earlier in the summer, who looks like a really promising goalkeeper, but has never played a top-flight game of football in his life. So it's probably for the best that Newcastle then signed a more experienced goalkeeper to go on top of that. And Hornacek is certainly that. I mean, he's played for Braga for the last couple of years, and he's played against Benfica, he's played against Porto, he's done a Europa League semi-final run, so got knocked out against Freiburg at the end of last season. So yes, I'm glad Newcastle have decided to actually address this, and it's clearly a signal that Nick Pope is going to be moving on. There's going to be a full changing of the guard in that Newcastle goalkeeping room. Look, I'm no goalkeeping expert, and I've seen a little bit of Lukas Hornacek. He seems pretty good, but I'm afraid I can't offer you much more than that. But I'm glad they've gone a bit older and more experienced. Like chucking Zhaoen in could have been a complete disaster, as promising as he is.
Dan, it's not like Newcastle United aren't reinvesting their money. There's £145 million spent as well, let's not forget, including this deal for Hornacek. The likes of Bamba and Toure have come in, as well as Sean Sturr and the other young goalkeeper. And yet, everyone is looking at Newcastle, and you've even been talking about these meetings you're having in the Athletic, or maybe relegation, that could be an option. Why is it like that when they are clearly trying to get players in? Or is it the approach that they're now having to take is the problem for Newcastle?
Yeah, I think they've got bodies in, but I mean, these aren't household names. They've pivoted out of necessity, I guess, as well as choice, to a strategy of buying young, promising players, and they're not even getting necessarily the young, promising players they really wanted. Like Manzambi was the one they wanted to replace Tonali. He was the first choice. Villa gazumped them. So they're having another difficult summer, I think. They have got bodies in, and they deserve credit for that, as you say, and they are spending money. It's not as if they're bringing in the cash and completely battening down the hatches, but these aren't players who are going to necessarily hit the ground running in the Premier League. I think we have to expect them to take time to find their feet, to learn about the club, learn about the league, learn about the culture, etc., as is always the case for new players in the Premier League. So I think the reason there's so much scepticism and the reason the R word has been mentioned in our meetings and kind of elsewhere is just we just don't know how these guys are going to do. And there are question marks, as Sam pointed out, about even the names they brought in last summer, like what Voltmanada is going to play. Can they get the Visser of the World Cup, who was so good against England, or do they get the Visser of last season, who was injured and inconsistent? So there are just so many question marks, and I think there are real question marks about these signings.
They've changed their manager at the end of July. I mean, you can't look at that situation without feeling a little bit of concern for them. I mean, who changes their manager at the end of July? It's madness. Whatever process that was has not worked out. And that's why they're giving off that chaos club energy, even though they're selling for very good fees and they are bringing in good young players, which is basically what you're supposed to do, right? The modern logic is that you sell high. And if they sell Bruno Guimaraes, they'll be selling him for 70 to 80 million pounds and he'll be 29 in November. Logic suggests that is a strong move and you reinvest that and you go again.
I think if they say sold one top player each summer, if Newcastle said, look, this is our place in the food chain, we're going to sell one star each year and then really reinvest that in the best young players in the game, then you could look at that and say, that's a really smart and interesting and probably sustainable and successful strategy. Selling, as Sam has outlined, 5 or 6 of your very best players in the space of 2.5 years is not that. That's a different thing. That actually suggests to me that the owners aren't as committed and as sort of dedicated to being successful as they were as they said they were when they came in.
But are they not a bit hamstrung as well?
There is financial rules, but I don't think you've got to factor.
I
don't think it's only financial.
You've got to factor in the UEFA settlement here, which forces them to generate revenue. So, what's the best way to do that? Sell a big player for big money. That has got to be a factor here. But also, that doesn't wash if it came to, say, Lewis Hall. So there's no way that Newcastle need, under the rules, to sell Lewis Hall. They clearly had to sell Gordon. You can't say no to that money for Tonali. Bruno is a different scenario again. But they must be okay financially now under UEFA's rules. So if they sell Lewis Hall from this point, that is when I would, again, my alarm bells would start to ring, because that is a choice and nothing but a choice.
You don't think selling your 3 best players in one summer is already alarm bells?
It's already absolutely terrible. I do agree with that, yeah.
Right. Let's see if we're talking about Bruno Guimaraes on the next episode of the Transfer Talk podcast. Something tells me that we will. Let's move on to Liverpool now. Pretty quiet summer. We're talking comparatively, given what happened last summer, but they've brought in Victor Munoz, as we've mentioned, from under Newcastle United's noses for £34.5 million. They've also announced the signing of Jeremy Jacquet, which was actually already done while Arne Slot was in charge at Liverpool. Dan, I know we could keep comparing what they did last summer, £446 million spent. Yes, they did get a substantial amount back in sales as well. Are you surprised, we're into August now, that this is where Liverpool are at in this transfer window?
Yeah, a bit surprised. And I think they have a slightly chaotic feel behind the scenes as well. They've lost their sporting director
to Saudi Arabia.
To Saudi Arabia.
He's about to go.
Yeah. He's about to go. That wasn't the plan. I think he was sort of saying he was going to see out his contract, which I think ran till next summer. That hasn't happened. They seem to sort of lurch from feast to famine, and then they're sort of back to, or famine to feast, and now they're back to famine. Liverpool, they had such a busy summer last summer. The year before that, they barely spent when Slot first came in. So I'm a bit surprised. I think part of the reason for their massive underperformance last season was the squad felt really imbalanced, and it felt like it was top heavy. It felt like they didn't necessarily have the right players for Slot's system, and I thought there'd be some kind of course correction this summer, particularly with the new manager. That hasn't happened so far. They are leaving it a little bit late, and I think most Liverpool fans would say that given they've lost kind of Salah, if they're going into this season with the squad as it is, then they've got some like real problem areas to address.
Sam, on I think it was Sky Sports X account, they put a graphic up about Liverpool's squad as it stands at the moment and the cover in each position. So they had 2 players in each position, but on some of them there were like the emoji that suggested you're injured. There was a sand timer, which suggested that player could be sold as well. Is that squad depth right now a big issue at Anfield?
Yeah, absolutely. They entered the summer needing probably 5 players, and they've not really.
If someone had said this last summer, that next summer Liverpool are going to need 5 players, you would have laughed.
Probably, but apply a bit of context. Like, some of this is injury forced. Like they do technically have enough right backs at the club, but they don't have enough fit right backs. They probably have just about enough centre backs at the club, you could argue, but not enough fit centre backs. So last summer we didn't know about that. So some of it is situational, but obviously they are lacking in bodies in certain areas here. I would suggest centre back, right back, centre mid, wing, and arguably striker. And so far, so far they've brought in Victor Munoz, but that's not even the main replacement for Mohamed Salah, who we've known is leaving since like March or April. They're still yet to get that kind of player. Now, obviously, we expect things to start kicking on in August, and Areola might start to request a bit more firmly, a few reinforcements here and there. But every preseason game so far, the talk has just been, God, there's no players here. There's not enough players. And then Joe Gomez gets injured, and then everyone looks at the centre-back depth chart again and goes, oh, geez, you can't go into the season like this. So I've got a few Liverpool friends of mine are panicking, like big time panicking, and I can absolutely see it. Like, so often I think preseason panics are probably unjustified, but in Liverpool's case here, can you blame them?
Dan, Sam mentioned the centre-back issue at the moment. If you look at it at the moment, Virgil van Dijk looks like he's the only fully fit centre-half. Jeremy Jacquet's come in, but he got a bad shoulder injury last season and apparently still feeling discomfort in that. Mm-hmm. Leone suffered that ACL last season. He's still injured. Joe Gomez was injured in pre-season as well. This looks like a real issue for Liverpool, that particular position. Or are you confident that once everyone is fit, that those four players and the quality of those four players will be enough for them?
I think they need one more in there.
If you look at two of them are untried at Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, like the big sliding doors moment for Liverpool, probably in terms of last season and even going forward, was not getting Mark Gay and then losing him to City in January. That was a signing they really needed last summer. They didn't get it, and I think everyone talked about how porous they were at the back and how kind of shaky they were at centre half last season. Obviously, Konaté's gone now, but I don't think they don't seem any more secure in there. And as you say, Leone's apparently really promising. I think Slot would have used him in the first team last season if he hadn't done his ACL. Now he's recovering from that and adapting to the Premier League. Jacquet, as you say, very coveted. I think Chelsea wanted to sign him as well.
Shock.
But has has this kind of shoulder issue. And Joe Gomez also, I really like Joe Gomez. He's versatile. I think he's dependable, but he's also injury prone. So, and when you factor in that Van Dijk's not getting any younger, I think that remains a problem position for them, and one I think they need to address before the end of the window.
Also, Van Dijk didn't travel for the US tour for Liverpool. Was one of three that didn't go. Was given a bit more of a break after the World Cup, considering his age and the amount of minutes that he has played over the last decade or so. It's just astronomical. So he actually hasn't done any work under Iraola yet. So just factor that in as well. He's the only fully fit centre half they have, but he hasn't even set foot on the pitch for the new manager just yet. So I mean that also adds a layer of concern. We don't really doubt Van Dijk, but you certainly doubt that situation, and you might end up with a scenario where they start the season and Van Dijk is next to Ryan Gravenberch at centre-back, because Gravenberch did occasionally drop into the defensive line last season and do sort of 20-30 minutes. And if no one's fit, then that might have to be the solution for week one, which is a crazy way to start the season.
It's Newcastle United away. That'd be an interesting game, wouldn't it?
That'd be the two crisis clubs.
Sam, look, we spoke about Bradley Barcola last week, and you suggested £145 million was a bit on the dear side.
A bit much, yeah. I got pelters for that as well.
There are sources indicating now that a deal might be able to be done at £128 million. I mean, that's
bargain.
Sounds like a bargain. Is that still too pricey for you?
Probably still too pricey, yeah. Look, my disdain for spending this much money on footballers is well established. It's a consistent vein of logic. I don't like spending this much money on footballers. There needs to be a very select group of players that could be worth this fee, and Bradley Barcola for me is not in that group. It's an absurd amount of money. Like let's not whitewash the fee, because we just seen Elliot Anderson and Morgan Rogers move, and it's not the first 100 million plus transfer, but I can't normalise this. You can't just say, oh yeah, 128 million, and I go, yeah, fine. And like that'll never happen, because it's an absurd amount of money to spend on a footballer. And more often than not, when you spend this much money on an attacker, it doesn't go that well. Like, if you're a bit cleverer and you go left of field, that's where you generally get your success. So I will not sit here and say that Barcola for £128 million is good value for money. If Liverpool can get that down to the 100 million mark, I'm sort of on board, but come on, like, it's going to have to come down further.
PSG publicly at least will say, oh, no, Barcola's our player, we don't want to let him go, but they are bringing other players in, Magnus Akliouche and Mike Gotts as well. Are they in the background preparing for life after Barcola?
It definitely looks like it. If it was just Akliouche, I'd maybe suggest not, because Akliouche is a winger to a point, but he's also one of those more like sort of floaty playmaking number 10s, kind of masquerading as a wide player. And his great skills are vision and picking a pass. So he looks like a number 10 who's playing on the wing. But Mika Gotts is a winger. So I don't think we can really believe the PSG line here that no, this is all, we're just furnishing the squad alongside Barcola. Like, I think that's a stance. Fine, you can take it. It's all a negotiation, but I don't really believe them there. If it was just Akliouche, I'd say that was replacing Lee Kang-in, who joined Atletico Madrid earlier this summer. But it's two wingers.
Dan, in terms of outgoings at Liverpool, this one's come up in the past week, Cody Gakpo and Tottenham Hotspur's interest in Cody Gakpo. Is that a good move? Does that make sense for you?
I mean, as a Spurs fan, I wouldn't be hugely excited by that, but I think he would definitely improve Tottenham's squad, given that Spurs have a problem on the left wing. I can understand why Spurs are looking at him. He's kind of Premier League proven. I don't think we've seen the very best of him at Liverpool. I don't think we've consistently seen the best of him anyway, perhaps because he's been in and out of the team a bit. I think he can just about at a push play kind of across the front line, and I think Spurs will be looking for versatility. So I think it's a transfer that ticks a few boxes. If Liverpool bring in Barcola, but I guess you could argue that Barcola is kind of the Salah replacement, and that then need another player to replace Gakpo as well.
Already short a winger, and then they sell a winger.
So I'm not sure about that one. It doesn't kind of light a fire in me, put it that way. But I can kind of rationally see why there might be interest on both sides in doing that deal.
But Barcola actually probably would be the replacement for Gakpo, wouldn't he? And they still need a replacement for Mohamed Salah, surely.
Well, technically he'd replace him on the left wing, but in terms of like the status in the squad as like the best winger at the club, he would be the Salah replacement just on the other side. You just have to tweak and move things around and maybe change the way you look at the squad makeup of Liverpool. But a player of Barcola's caliber would be the Salah replacement in terms of reputation, if not in position.
Dan, another player linked with a move away from Liverpool, and he has been linked with a move away from Liverpool for the past few transfer windows, is Curtis Jones. Inter Milan, again interested. We think they might be prepared to pay around £30 million for him. Not sure whether you saw what happened in pre-season when him and Dominic Szoboszlai were arguing over the captain's armband in a pre-season friendly.
Yeah, I heard about that. Slightly strange for a pre-season friendly, but look, I really like Curtis Jones as a player. I think you could have made a case that he's a player that England could have done with over the summer. Again, he's just never kind of consistently held down a regular first team spot week in, week out. And you can understand why. They've got Gravenberch, they've got McAllister, they've got Szoboszlai. They've got some very good players playing in the similar positions.
My argument there, though, that he would agree on the quality of the three. But when those three are played into the ground, and then Curtis Jones isn't used, you get to the point where it's a nose to spite the face situation where Curtis Jones was underutilised by Slot last season, like criminally underutilised in my opinion, if not just because of his quality, then because the other three were so tired by the end of it because they were just used that you just had to put Jones in at some point. He did not command a first team spot regularly, but I actually don't think it was his fault. I agree, he's a lovely player.
Yeah, I mean, I even though you kind of don't see as much of them and they slip out of a vision a bit, I still quite like it when English players kind of go to Italy or go overseas. I think there's something quite romantic about it. So yeah, I think it'd be an interesting move for him, and I can see him like running games in the Serie A quite comfortably and really impressing in a kind of quite interesting Inter Milan side.
Okay, let's talk the club that were top of the spending. And I think Tottenham Hotspur fans were getting rather excited by Roberto De Zerbi's quote earlier on this week. He said, "The transfer market is not finished. We have completed 60% of our project in the transfer market. Now we have another bomber."
60% would imply 4 more players, wouldn't it? Right?
Yes.
4 more players?
Or
I think he's since said...
or spending.
I think he's since said
or spending.
2 or 3.
Right.
possibly. Yeah, it could be spending.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, fine. Possibly 3 more signings. Is Cody Gakpo down that bomber, or should we be expecting someone else?
Does Cody Gakpo qualify as a bomber?
What is what is a bomber, by the way?
I think,
We've been asking this
we
question
had a
quite a
go
lot.
at defining a bomber on The Athletic. There were a few criteria. I think it has to be more than 50 million. It has to be a forward, I think we decided. And it has to be a kind of quote-unquote big player.
Doesn't there have to be some element of surprise here?
Does it necessarily have to be more than 50 million?
Well, I
Because
think
you could have a free agent. Say Mohamed Salah turns up at Tottenham.
Okay, Salah
Yeah.
could be
Bomber.
a bomber. Yeah,
Bomber.
Salah could be a bomber.
But
I
that's
think
element of surprise.
I think De
kicking in.
Zerbi then said he said Fernandes, Tonali, and Senesi were bombers. So that Senesi actually doesn't meet 2 of my criteria.
Two of
he's
those 3 were
free
bombers.
and a defender.
But he wasn't a bomber. That's a misuse. of
Well,
the word
yeah,
bomber.
this is we'll tell De Zerbi that.
I won't.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there's a very good chance there isn't really a bomber, although it certainly isn't one as imminent as De Zerbi was suggesting. I think it's quite a clever way of putting pressure on the people above him to get moving. Spurs have sorted out their back line. You know, they've got a new contract for Kinski in goal. They've signed a load of new defenders. They've got 2 defensive-minded midfielders. So that area of the pitch going backwards is sorted. But you still look at their front line, I think, and I think that is the front line that was arguably the weakest side of a team that nearly got relegated last season. So they need players.
So Sam, would Savinho be a bomber?
No, because leaning in on the element of surprise, who would be shocked if Savinho joined Spurs? They've been trying to sign him for a year now, so I don't think that would qualify.
But hold on, I'm really interested in this bomber.
Yeah, well, I don't really know what it is either.
Yeah, but you've said a few different elements to this.
Mm-hmm.
Do they all have to happen, or can we say 2 of the 3 or 1 of the 3 to constitute a bomber?
There's a different podcast that sorts this sort of thing out. Ask them.
I wonder if they've done it.
They probably have. I look. Savinho, no, it doesn't have the element of surprise. Also, probably again, like you'd feel. Dan, how did you describe yourself with potential Gakpo move? Was it unmoved or?
Yeah, I can see the logic, but it doesn't light a fire.
Yeah, it doesn't light a fire in you. Would Savinho light a fire in you?
Yeah, there's something about a Brazilian winger that does kind of stir my emotions
Bomber.
a bit. But yeah, I think with the Savinho signing, I think you would obviously be buying potential as well. You'd be saying this guy's not hit the levels that we think he can at City. We think he can go up 2 or 3. He's shown a glimpse of what he can do in the Premier League. But we think we can get more from him, and I think that's why Spurs are interested in Savinho.
I did actually look it up, by the way, before, and it's something to do with a drum in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
That actually it makes me more confused.
Yep.
Same.
Thanks for that.
Savinho or Gakpo, who's the better fit?
I think at this.
Neither of them are exciting you.
No, well, not.
Are they?
Not. If you had to make me choose, I'd go for Savinho. I think.
Is this for the left or the right wing?
This is for the left.
For the left wing.
Yeah.
Gakpo's better on the left, isn't he? Actually, no. Savinho his best ever football was at Girona on the left side.
I quite like a dribbler. I think having a player that can beat a man, and Savinho. I think Savinho's problem has been the final ball.
Yeah.
Not kind of running quickly with it and getting past someone. So I think if that can be worked on, then there's a player there.
If it is to be 3 more signings, what positions? I think we've covered.
I think Spurs need a centre forward, a left winger, and given the big worry I think for Spurs is that they're going into next season and their 2 number 10s are both. Well, Maddison is back from his ACL but has a different injury. Xavi Simons has an ACL injury. Kulusevski is a big question mark because of his kneecap injury that ruled him out for the whole last season. So and they've also got Wilson Odobert with an ACL injury. So they kind of, if you imagine they have 8 to 9 players for those 3 positions behind the centre forward, and 4 of them are coming off major knee injuries, not to mention Kudus, who had a big groin or muscle problem that ruled him out of the World Cup. they've got worries there. So I think they probably need a left winger, centre forward, and maybe a sort of another number 10 as well.
Luckily, those are really cheap positions to recruit in,
Yeah.
so you'll be fine.
Spurs are big spenders now.
Dan, it's been no secret that the likes of Vicario and Romero look like they're surplus at Tottenham Hotspur. And it's kind of been known for a while. Here we are in August. There's still Tottenham Hotspur players. Does that surprise you that they haven't managed to get those deals sanctioned so far?
With Romero, not really, because I guess he was always going to play the World Cup, focus on that, have a break, and then come back. I think he's come back to Spurs in the last 2 or 3 days, so I would expect that to ramp up from now. Vicario more so, because I think it was pretty obvious from the back end of last season that De Zerbi was going to make Kinski as number 1. Spurs have since given him a new contract. I guess with Vicario, it's just about, I think he probably favours a return to Italy, or that makes the most sense. So I guess it's about finding an Italian club, probably Inter or Juve.
You need a buyer.
Basically. You need a buyer. Yeah, finding a club who can pay the money that Spurs are going to want for a good goalkeeper.
The only link that I've seen, and you tell me if there's been others, but the only link I've seen is Juventus. It's the only
back in the last season, there were links to Inter, and now it's Juve. Yeah.
Right, and the problem is, speaking from experience here, when Juve are courting your goalkeeper, they go up in €1 million increments every week until they hit €6 million and then refuse to bid anymore. So they are not interested in spending a lot of money on this position. So if Juve are your buyer, you are in for a long summer, and that's why Vicario probably hasn't gone anywhere yet.
Just finally on Tottenham Hotspur, Dan, a player who seems to be linked with the move away probably ever since he's arrived there. He scored the winning goal in that pre-season friendly, didn't he, against Chelsea, Richarlison? And yet there was some interesting quotes after the game about whether he's actually going to be at Tottenham Hotspur come the start of the season. What's your reading of that situation? Do you expect him to be there still?
Yeah, I mean, I think De Zerbi said sometimes he wants to leave, sometimes he wants to stay, which kind of feels on brand for a Charlton somehow. My reading is that Spurs would definitely sell him if they got a good offer. I think they would probably love a Saudi club to kind of bid a lot of money for him, for example, provided Richarlison was interested in that move. But I sense from De Zerbi's comments and the way he's used him that Spurs aren't desperate to get rid of Richarlison. So I don't think they're going to be hawking him around to try and kind of get rid of him at any cost. They are light in that position. It's only really Richarlison and Solanke, both, again, sort of injury-prone players, at least Solanke is since he joined Spurs. And so, I think if they sold him, they need to replace him. So for me, Richarlison goes if Spurs get a really good offer they can't refuse in the last few weeks of the window. If not, he probably, kind of somewhat to my surprise, does another season with Spurs.
It just seems that they've sorted everything out. The defence looks pretty solid with the players that they brought in. The people that can create goals are starting to filter into that team, and yet the person who can put the ball into the back of the net on a regular basis is probably lacking.
No, I like Solanke a lot. It's just, please stay fit. It's just one of those situations. And Richarlison was an incredible dog to have in the fight last season when it really came to the relegation scrap. But Spurs are obviously setting their sights very high at this point. Drawing. They're not going to go, let's go to 12th, let's go to 8th, and let's go to 5th. They're just going to shoot straight for 4th and 5th, as they should. So at this point, it is a question of do you have the requisite quality up front, which is why Dan wants 3 new players.
Yeah, you mentioned Tottenham Hotspur's need for a striker. Lots of talk during this transfer window, Dan, about Krupi from Bournemouth. But he's out for 3 or 4 months now with that injury in pre-season. How big a blow would that have been to Tottenham Hotspur? Do you think they'll have to reposition and go for someone else now?
Yeah, I think we reported at The Athletic that Bournemouth didn't want to sell him regardless. Obviously, we don't know if had he stayed fit, what would have happened. That could have been a negotiating position. But look, I think generally he's a player that Spurs should really like. He was brilliant last season. I think he's really a De Zerbi-ish type player, a kind of number 9 who's happy to kind of drop, let the wingers go beyond him. A really smart finisher, good touch, able to bring others into play. So yeah, a great player. I can't really see Spurs going for him now. As you said, he's going to be out for the foreseeable future. It feels like that's probably put paid to a summer transfer, but I do wonder whether he's a kind of player on the list for future windows. I mean, as we know, Spurs have already signed a striker from Bournemouth for a lot of money. And I think Krupi would be a kind of more exciting addition than Solanke was, actually. I think he's that good. So, yes, it ticks a lot of the boxes for me, but kind of struggling to see it now this summer.
Right, let's round up some of the other deals from this week. Dan, this was an interesting one because Como have now agreed a deal with Chelsea that could be worth in excess of £30 million for Trevoh Chalobah. Chelsea are the biggest spenders so far in this Premier League transfer window, and yet they have recouped now, once this deal goes through, in excess of £150 million. If you look back at Andre Santos and Cucurella, the two big deals that they have sold so far in this transfer window, everyone focuses on how much Chelsea spend, how many players they bring in, the type of player that they bring in, but they don't half sell well, do they?
They've always been really good at that. I mean, I think the Bowley Clearlake era, it was very much driven by the academy. I mean, we've already mentioned some of the players that Chelsea have sold from their academy, like Mark Gay and Dominic Solanke, who they got good money for. And I think under the new ownership, it's partly a consequence of having bought just so many young players who even though they're on these ludicrously long contracts, do retain a lot of value because of their age and their quality. So, yeah, Chelsea have always been good at this, but I still feel like I don't know how many players they've got in their squad at the moment, but I read, including Chalobah, they've got 11 players in the first team who can play centre half at the moment.
It's a lot. Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of bored players at Chelsea this year unless they really start selling fast.
Well, these guys have got to go, haven't they? Disassi's got to go, Badiashile, these players, and all right, they might be lining up to try a back three at some point, but even if that's the case, they still have way too many players that can play centre half. So, but that's the case across the board. They've got so many footballers. Like Liam Delap should probably find another club to play for. Like there doesn't seem to be a lot of faith in him at this point. So Chelsea do need to get on and sell. And look, they've made like the Andre Santos sale is fantastic for the books. I think they're probably a bit annoyed to lose him, but considering there's no European football, there might not be enough game time to go around. It's a good sale. Chalobah, I've got to say, 25 million rising to 30. It's cheap for a player of his established quality, for his ability to play centre back and right back, homegrown. Maybe the pure profit is doing the talking here, but like just surface level, 25 million pounds rising to 30 for 30 odd for Chalobah is pretty cheap.
Sam, Brentford have broken their own club record that was held by Dango Ouattara, £35 million. They've signed Mamadou Sangare for a deal worth £39 million from Lens. What are they getting?
Oh, I love him. He's so good. Really, really good. They're getting a prolific ball winner in the centre of the park and a player who covers every blade of grass. His heat map is hilarious. It's the whole pitch. So I'm a big, big fan of Sangare, and I think...
We always hear like Brentford, Bournemouth, Brighton always bringing in these players, and you were saying, I love this player.
Yeah.
Where's everyone else? Why is everyone else not signing these players?
I don't know. I think Liverpool, Manchester United, a few others who have been in the market this summer or should be in the market this summer for centre mids have probably missed a trick here. And look, the trend is that those clubs let Bournemouth, Brentford, Brighton, they do their scouting for them. They buy the player for 40, and if they impress in the Premier League, you remove the risk, and then they pay the higher price. If that's the situation, then fine. But I would just go to Lens first and just pay 40 million for Sangare because he's really good. And I would not be surprised if in 1 or 2 years Liverpool try and buy him for £80 million because he's really, really good. So yeah, some of my frustration with some of the deals and the fees that we talk about is born out of the fact that you can be smarter and you can be quicker, and that's what those clubs do.
Talk about smart. This one has got smart written all over it. Yes, he's in his 30s, but Christian Norgard, of course, didn't get the game time he wanted at Arsenal last season. Previously, a regular in the Premier League, captain of Brentford, £7 million. The deal agreed with Everton. That looks like great business.
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of talking about all these fees, I've just kind of lost all concept of what's a good price and what's not now. But yeah, I'll take your word for it, Dimes. I mean,
7 million is peanuts at this point.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, look, I think obviously
if they get 2 or 3 seasons out,
yeah, and
£7 million.
I'm being tongue in cheek. Yeah,
sorry.
he didn't get the game time at Arsenal last season. He would have wanted. Obviously, they're looking for someone with a bit more quality in Guimaraes now. But I think he's a very Moyesian player. He's very dependable. You can see that Everton are actually building with Garner and obviously Hayden Hackney as well. Quite an interesting midfield. I think there's going to be the kind of real engine room of a good Moyes team. And I think I think he's a canny signing in that regard, and he'll be a good part of that.
Fulham. 2 Real Madrid players.
Not my forte.
Surprise. But it's not surprising that they've gone back to Real Madrid. Well, Alvaro Arbeloa has gone to Real Madrid to bring in Gonzalo Garcia, who was actually the top scorer at the Club World Cup last summer.
Yes.
So, Bomba.
Yes. Exactly. And Cesar Palacios as well. The combined fees around £42.3 million. Sam mentioned it earlier about Fulham fans getting a bit worried that is this the season they could go down? I mean, clearly we haven't seen enough of these players because they were in and around the Real Madrid team. But if they're buying players from Real Madrid, maybe.
Well, it's no surprise.
Fulham looking okay.
Well, I think obviously it's no surprise that Arbeloa, who I think was the Castilla coach before he got the Madrid job in the second half of last season and replaced Alonso, he'll know these players really, really well. He'll work with these players for many years. So it's not a huge surprise. I feel like these transfers have been dragging on for forever. But I think Fulham fans can kind of be excited by them. I think there are question marks about as we've said, any player coming to the Premier League, but kind of players coming from that sort of level. But I think Fulham have kind of, certainly under Marco Silva, managed to sell good players every year, recruit sort of fairly well, and continue to sort of punch around upper mid-table. So that will be the aim with Arbeloa. But I do share kind of Sam's slight concerns that they feel like a real unknown quantity going in this season, Fulham, and obviously it could go anyway, but you kind of wonder if it's going to go one of two ways pretty sharply.
Yeah. I think it should be noted here that Real Madrid did not want to sell Gonzalo Garcia. Like, got to the point where kind of it made sense, but Jose Mourinho was not particularly keen to lose this player. So that's a positive. They only did so because they were able to sign a new striker from Levante called Carlos Espy. So they activated his release clause, and he becomes, strange parlance to use, but Real Madrid basically always want a Joselu. They want a player to bring off the bench for 10 minutes at the end and just cause absolute carnage. And Gonzalo Garcia was that player for Real Madrid. So in order to sell Garcia, they needed a new Joselu. So that's Carlos Espy. So now Gonzalo Garcia can go to Real Madrid. To Fulham. And I like him. Good touch, holds the ball up, natural finisher. Just make sure you get in the ball and create enough chances for him. That would be the question.
Right, Sam, finally, we spoke about Mamadou Sangare and you saying you love him. I think we're going to say the same thing because of the club involved. Bournemouth have just completed the signing of the Portugal international defender Antonio Silva, £25.7 million from Benfica.
Mm-hmm.
Good?
Yeah, great. Yeah, I love it. Look, Antonio Silva has not become the player that a lot of us expected him to be about 4 years ago when he was kind of on the Varane track. He stalled off a little bit. However, I wrote a feature about this last year, actually, and there are certain clubs that just nail recruitment in certain positions, and Bournemouth are so good at scouting centre-backs. Their track record of centre-backs is absolutely phenomenal. So if Bournemouth sign a centre-back, just assume it's going to be great.
Sam, once again, fantastic stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dan, brilliant. Look, you weren't a surprise. We're not paying you over 50 million, but the shorts constitute that you are today's bomber.
Thank you, Dan.
And thank you.
What an honour.
It's the first bomber we've given out. It's the first time we've mentioned bomber, actually.
I'm honest.
It's the first time we've mentioned. We should have that, shouldn't we? End of the season, the bombers.
Bomber of the week.
Yep. That's staying. Bomber of the week. 100%. And thank you for listening and watching wherever you've been listening or watching, in your cars or on the train, in the wind or in the rain, in your house or in the shed, on your couch or in your bed. On the hills or in the valleys, in the streets or in the alleys, out for a run or maybe a walk. Thanks for listening to Transfer Talk.
And that's for sure.